Today I'm going to give a summary and an update on our Woodjam copper gold project located in central British Columbia. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in, and I want to thank the Metals Investment Forum team for allowing me to present this project. So we'll start off real quickly going through the cautionary statements page. This will be on the YouTube. Anybody down the road that in the next few days that wants to read this in detail, they can read this thing, and I won't go into it right now. Okay, the project, it's in a Tier 1 jurisdiction, British Columbia. It's actually in southern BC. It's approximately maybe a 6.5 to 7 hour drive from my office in Vancouver. It's taken us 20 years to assemble this project. It's large, 64,000 and some hectares, which would equate to 250 square miles if we were talking to somebody in the US. It has an excellent infrastructure. It's in an area where resource industries are what drives the economy, so it has skilled labor and friendly audience. We have a good relationship with the local First Nations communities, and we own the project outright, subject to a small royalty in favor of Gold Fields. Gold Fields was our major partner, option partner from 2015 or 2009 to 2015, and they spent $30 million. When we acquired their interest back, they had earned a 51% interest. They got a royalty. On the extreme right, the claim position, you can see our neighbors: Teck Corporation to the south, Imperial Metals to the north, Freeport-McMoran further south, Eastfield, an aggressive junior that we were involved with as well, also has land positions in the area. The local community of Williams Lake is the center of where all this occurs. It's approximately an hour's drive from the project. Okay, so there are operating gold mines and copper gold mines in this belt of rocks, which we call Quesnel terrain. It includes Copper Mountain, it includes Afton, it includes Mount Polley, it includes Mount Milligan, and some others, chemists included. It's related to these other ones over here, including Red Chris. We won't debate that connection quite this time. I have put up here some operating entities that are doing well right now, which have sort of similar metrics. That includes Copper Mountain, Gibraltar, Mount Polley, Mount Milligan. Mount Milligan, on the other hand, does have a fairly onerous streaming agreement. Gold Fields alluded to the fact that the geological, one of the real driving things of this thing is that it has commonalities, theoretically at least, to the Newcrest Cadia operations in Australia. So very quickly, is a Google image. The project, all of these patchwork of colors is clear cuts. Mount Polley, 30 kilometers to the north. Gibraltar, a little further to the northwest. Williams Lake, almost due west. Historically, we acquired the project initially by staking it. Some of the key things that happened: we had a joint venture. The two companies that ultimately formed Consolidated Woodjam. 2009, so Johannesburg-based Gold Fields became an option partner. They had a right to earn a 51% interest and then take it to 70%. They got to the 51, they never got to the 70, and in 2015, they sold the project back to us for 19.9% of the stock. That transaction was complicated, and it took 3 more years to close. What do we have? Based on 95,000 meters of drilling, largely at the time, there's more now. There are 4 deposits that have resources. 3 of them are compliant, all done by Gold Fields. One of them is particularly sensitive to copper, and it is the largest one. It's the Southeast Zone with 262 million tons, grading 0.3 copper and 0.11 grams gold. Pardon me, that is the total resource. 221 million tons, grading 0.31, 0.05 grams gold. Some moly. The metal values have been calculated by Goldfields. 1.5 billion pounds of contained copper, almost 400,000 ounces of gold. But then the satellite deposits, which are smaller, but are also slightly different geologically, much higher gold. Just fast forwarding right to the bottom, there's 1.7 billion pounds of copper, almost 1 million ounces of gold in these resources computed by Goldfields. They were done at metal prices, which would come up with the same answer today. I would suspect $16.50 gold, $3.90 copper. So for comparison, this right-hand side of the slide is all Woodjam metrics. Some of the higher grade holes on the extreme right, the various zones towards the middle. And the important takeaway on this thing is comparing them to other operating entities. 0.41 compares favorably to Gibraltar at 0.28, Highland Valley 0.29, et cetera, et cetera. So I alluded to the fact that there are two geological styles here. One is more of a classical calc-alkaline porphyry type thing, and it hosts the southeast zone, which is the largest resource. These satellite features, which are slightly different geology related to the magma, same magma almost for certain, like come out as much smaller mag features, and they have gold, and there's a lot of them left to drill. To date, we have, as of the end of July, we were at 431 holes, 131,000 meters. We can add a few, another 4 or 5 holes to that. It would be now 135,000 meters of drilling. The good news is there's no outcrop. The bad news is there's no outcrop. So we have to use geophysics. This is the induced polarization map for the property. It tends to work very well, although there's two different styles of things that need to be looked at. The calc-alkaline, larger tonnage copper things tend to give bullseye type features. The more gold-rich features are certainly targeted by IP, but they tend to be distal to the strongest features. Given that there's no outcrop in this area, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to make these much bigger. There's huge areas, sort of comparable features, no drill holes, no outcrop, sort of sitting in the same kind of a feature. Okay, I put a couple of high points on this thing. We announced our first round of drilling 2 weeks ago. This hole, one of the holes that was drilled, was an infill hole in an area that was not dense enough in our minds. We obtained a 343 meter intercept, 0.4 copper, 0.12 grams gold, including 142 meters, much higher. That was one of the objectives, was to put the southeast zone back on the map. We want to make it bigger. We feel we can. The other one was just go straight exploratory, brand new territory. So we drilled 2 holes up in what we call the megaton area, which is trying to establish that we have a through-going sort of feature right here that could double with perhaps the size of the southeast zone. These holes are wrecky in nature, but they're still very successful. This hole particularly here, the first hole that we drilled, which is roughly a 1.6 kilometer step out from the southeast zone, it had a 96 meter intercept, 0.15% copper. The other thing is it had a lot of moly, much more moly than we've even seen down here. It actually had 118 meters of 0.53% moly. That's important. The best sort of copper gold porphyries in the world, I'll use Bayham Canyon as an example. Bayham has currently 550 million tons in reserves, 0.44% copper, 0.16 grams per ton gold, and 0.031% moly. So I think what we're trying to say here is that this thing could be of world-class significance. So jumping back to what we were doing last year, we were drilling one of the gold-rich sort of areas. Gold was more on the interest level for the public at this point. This was a year ago. We drilled 3 holes in the Deerhorn area, and we got spectacular results. The first hole there, we had 110 meters, 0.44 copper, 2.57 grams gold. That's got a copper equivalent of almost 3%. It sits in the middle of conceptual pit put together by Goldfields. So it's certainly a target that we feel we really want to make this thing bigger. This is really quite striking. It's where we're currently drilling. So I'm going to call this our guidance. When this slide was first put together earlier this year, we were telling the audience that we would hope to drill 7 to 10 holes. Well, we will do that, maybe even more. The drilling this year has been very efficient. Our costs that last year related to some very wet conditions seem to be alleviated this year. So we have a fantastic sort of setup where we log core, process core, store core. This is what it looks like. It's 133,000 meters of core. This costs $30 million to use. It's a serious asset. We're all a technical group. We have lots of geological engineering experience with us. And I'll leave that slide for people to read at their leisure. So right now we're trading at around 12 cents. We were spent most of the summer sort of close to 15 to 20 cents, but we've come off a bit. I'm just going to say general market conditions and maybe the delay in getting our results from the labs have contributed to that. The major shareholders, Goldfields, now 13.3%. They dropped from 19.9 by not participating in the last couple of financings. Management and directors. A related company, Eastfield, as I alluded to, that some of it has commonality with respect to some of the directors. Okay, so tier 1 jurisdiction. We're near operating entities. We have an excellent infrastructure, lots of highways, power, et cetera, et cetera. There's a large land base that I talked about. Within that, talking about copper equivalent basis, we have 2.5 billion pounds of copper on an equivalent basis at a grade of 0.41, throwing the gold in it as a credit. Most of the drilling was done by Goldfields. Goldfields withdrew from the project in 2015. They had closed all of their North American operations at that point. And there was more an internal thing that was happening there. It had nothing particularly to do with it. In fact, the project was considered to be within the top 3 of the greenfield projects on a world basis at that point by them. So some of the results can be spectacular. In the southeast zone, we've had holes as good as over 1% copper and almost half a gram gold over 200 meters. The Deerhorn zone, last year's hole is now the star, 110 meters, 2.57 grams gold, 0.44 copper. Megabuck, which Goldfields hasn't done much work with, is where we started. It has some spectacular holes and it is open for expansion. 361 meters in one hole, 0.12% copper, 0.84 grams gold. So we have exploration upside in virtually all of these areas. We have good management. I'm getting close to the end, so this is our contact info. We would love to talk to anybody. And again, I put this slide up just to prove that we're not really on top of a mountain where we should have an ice axe. This was drilling in July, southeast zone, very hot that day. This is our part of our facility in the community of Horsefly, about 15 kilometers from here, where we store core, process core, etc. And we share their land base with other resource neighbors. I think that's important because they're friendly. These are ranchers, obviously, with their cattle, heavily horse industry is very active. People in the local community of Horsefly often work for Mount Poly. So I guess right now I'm going to leave it at that. I know there are other presentations that are coming on, so it's appropriate not to run over. Thank you very much for your time.